Imagine showing up for what you think is a job interview and walking away with a uniform and a contract instead. That's exactly how Tim's exciting psychology career began. Professionally Psyched is the podcast that brings you cutting-edge psychology research and real-world insights from our psych community of clinicians, researchers, and educators alike. In our special alumni spotlights, we chat to graduates from our psychology degree programs about how their skills learnt in the classroom have become powerful tools supporting diverse career journeys and successes. Hi everyone and welcome to Professionally Psyched. I'm Jessica Muller, PhD candidate in Public Health at James Cook University, and before we get started we'd like to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which we record, and for me today that's the Bindal and Wulgurukaba peoples. And I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and cultures from wherever you may be tuning in from across the country. In this alumni spotlight, Dr. Amanda Krause speaks with Tim O'Donnell, a registered psychologist who worked in adult corrections before realising he needed to reach people at a younger age. Tim shares how playfulness and empathy play a key role when connecting with kids in youth detention. So grab your headphones and get ready to get professionally psyched about why flexibility trumps rigid protocols. Enjoy.
Tim, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. To start, could you please introduce yourself to us?
Hello, my name is Timothy O'Donnell and I'm a generally registered psychologist here within Townsville and an alumni of James Cook University.
And I imagine that there has been a little bit of a journey to getting to the point that you're now able to say that you're a registered psychologist. So could you tell us a little bit about your career journey?
So I grew up in far north Queensland and then came down here to Townsville for university. Then finishing up, I was desperate to get any job that would help support me do my registration process. And I wanted to get in as quick to do that as possible. And a colleague of mine and I went to the JCU job fair after our graduation, and we went to every single booth. And we stopped at the Queensland Correctional Centre booth and they said, "Do you need psychologists?" And they were like, "Yeah, sure. Come in tomorrow." It was a Thursday that day. So we both showed up the next day, dressed up as nice as we could, and got a tour of the Stewart Correctional Facility. Because we dressed up, the offenders in there thought we were detectives, and so proceeded to catcall and yell out and make threats as we were walking around, which was an interesting experience. And so my colleague decided not for him, didn't really enjoy it, but I'm just desperate to get into work and start progressing on my registration. So I said, yeah, sign me up. I got told to come in that Monday morning and I thought, great, I've got a proper interview. They've checked if I'm willing to show up. So I showed up on the Monday and I did not have an interview. I had a contract. So they had me sign some documentation, handed me a uniform. About 30 minutes later, I was sitting in a room learning how to do suicide risk assessments with another psychologist there. I stayed at the facility about 3 years, but with the transitions in boards, for me, I did all that I could at the centre. There wasn't a great breadth of work that we were permitted to do at the time, and I couldn't cover my younger person's work. I couldn't cover the breadth of assessments that I needed to finish. So after just under 3 years at the centre, I did actually have to leave to continue my registration. So I worked for a community support agency, which is called Solus at the time. We would support people with serious mental illness coming out of the acute inpatient unit or secure inpatient units and help them to reintegrate back into the community or provide support within the community for them. Did that for a little while, and then I secured a position at the youth detention facility. So I worked out at Cleveland Youth Detention in the adolescent forensic mental health team for a little while, which got my start into Q Health. And after the person I was backfilling returned, I ended up in the Evolved Therapeutic Service as they were looking for someone. And they do specialist work for children with complex trauma, be that developmental, emotional, neglectful, or sexual trauma, who are in the care or have orders with child safety. That was a very complex work, and I stayed within that team for 11 years. So I entered as an entry-level clinician. It was there I finally finished off my registration, which was just such a load off. Got a senior position at Evolve after 3 or 4 years. And then after another 3 or 4 years, I actually got the position of the professional development coordinator with the team, which is a senior position in which you no longer just carry a client load, but you also provide training on trauma-informed work to the community. That was a really great position, and I really liked my time at Evolve Therapeutic. However, after 11 years working in highly complex circles with children with severe trauma difficulties, time for a bit of a change for me. And currently, I've transitioned to the Child Development Service where I'm doing specialist assessments within the youth detention facility. So I'm doing psychometric work assessments to try and get the young people in there the correct diagnosis that they require, and also NDIS support whenever possible. So lots and lots of assessments for me currently.
How interesting that you've worked in this detention center trauma space for so long. You mentioned how your colleague sort of was scared away from it, but you seem to have gravitated towards that space.
Kind of did set the trajectory of my career as well, is that I realized I had no problem working with people who had done some pretty terrible things, and that sometimes you could actually see the factors that had influenced them, and that really lit a spark in me. It's like, I would really like to help these people long before they get to the point that they're doing these sort of things. And that really led me to wanting to work with a younger and younger cohort. It's a funny circle that I started working with adults and I thought I got to get to these people when they're younger. And I went to adolescent forensic mental health and I thought, oh, these kids still have so many difficulties. I got to get to them when they're even younger. So I went to Evolve Therapeutic and I worked with quite young kids, and some of them had been removed from families. Other times we did get to work with their families, but it also kind of instilled in me as like, oh, I got to work with the kids before they have the children. And so it kind of went full circle. But it's been a really interesting career path for me. And I really did enjoy the time at Evolve, in particular child and youth work, because flexibility and how you deliver service to that group, it's all about connection. It's all about pace and playfulness. And you really get a wide breadth of, hey, how can you engage? How can you build that relationship to build that trust to work effectively? And that's been a never-ending struggle and an unending treat for me as well, and coming up creative and playful ways to engage. And I'm still doing that in my current work, because anyone who's worked with kids in youth detention, they don't really want to come and talk about their feelings, and they don't want to do difficult assessment. So you've got to try and build a reputation as, hey, some parts of this will be boring, but other times we're going to play, we're going to do games, we're going to find a way to make this fun and enjoyable as much as possible for you. So you come down and you tell your mates when they have to come down to see Tim, hey, Tim's all right, he's friendly, he's good. Some parts will be boring, but he'll see you. He'll look after you.
Yeah, what's your top tip for building the rapport with people to be able to have that safe space to play and develop that relationship?
People think that you build a relationship to be able to do the work. And I don't believe that's the case. I believe the relationship is the work. You build that rapport, you build that connection, and then everything else falls into place afterwards. So for me, it's always been the PACE approach: playfulness, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy, and just ramming that hard down. Particularly when you're first trying to work with this sort of kid, they've been lectured, they've been told stuff, but having someone come in and be, hey, I'm playful, I accept you for your history, I'm empathetic about what's happening to you, I'm curious about how you are right now, and then just flowing in and out of those different states almost constantly, and then mixing in some dyadic developmental practice as well, is really what works the best for me. And now, because I'm not doing specific counseling work, I'm more on the assessment side almost exclusively. It's still bringing that in. It's like, hey, I've got to get through a WISC assessment with you. I know that's going to be really boring. So what I've actually brought in is I brought some games. I've got some stuff that we'll do first. Let's build relationship. Let's build tact. And so when you're getting bored of this assessment and you're wanting to leave, and I say, hey, how about we just get one more subtest done, one more subtest today? You'll listen. And most importantly, you'll try your best. And that has to be the way you approach it. Far too many clinicians think that you just build a bit of the relationship and then you jump straight into doing the work. But for me, the relationship should be the primary focus, even if it means taking less time to discuss history or do something else. When you get around to talking about that history or doing the assessment or doing the task or doing the psych ed, if you've built a proper relationship, then that will happen much faster and much more effectively with a relationship as a foundation.
Do you have the time to break those assessments into pieces, or are you pushed for the time to get through those assessments?
Well, I've been pretty lucky in that it's a pilot program. So they basically said, Tim, this is what we need done. How can you get it done? And I've taken my expertise and said, well, this is what I'm going to do. So yeah, I'm going to break it up. I'm going to try and adhere as much as possible to the expectations, requirements of the WISC and the Connors and the brief and all the other stuff that we're doing. But I'm going to find the flexibility where I can. So yeah, I'm going to break it up. I'm going to do half today and half next week, or I'm going to try and get through, or even I'm going to do 3 days in a row of just a couple of subtests because you're only tolerating about 10 minutes at a time. And I'm going to focus on, hey, I'm going to do the nonverbal index stuff first, and then I'm going to try and do the rest of the stuff for the rest of the FSIQ. But if I don't get to those other core stuff, I've still got an NVI index. I've still got that score, and your speech and language is delayed. So that's probably the most useful thing for me. Anyway, and then also being able to make the call of saying, actually, you don't have enough speech and language to do even the nonverbal index. Let's go for a Tony. Let's have a look at something else. Everything you're doing with this cohort of kids isn't going to go exactly to plan. You have to find the flexibility. You have to accept, hey, I've convinced them they're coming down, but now something else has happened. There's a code on, kids can't move. My entire clinic is shut down for the next 4 hours. What else can we do? So, maybe sometimes when it's difficult to find the young person or they've been released and they won't see me in the community, hey, let's do more focus on the ABAS. Let's get more brief. But I try and pull information from as many sources as possible to paint as clear a picture as possible in terms of what the child's deficits are.
Do you see the same people in and out of the center, or is there continuity there?
It's very unpredictable how long we will have a young person in Cleveland. So luckily for me that when they are discharged from the center, I can keep trying to follow them up in the community. But I'm actually having a fair bit of success engaging the young people while they're in the center, particularly if I can get them at a time they're bored. And so generally I get most of the in-person stuff done while they're in the center. And then I might need some feedbacks or something else while they're in the community, but then trying to contact their families and carers and previous teachers and current teachers to get other collateral information. We can do that while they're in the center and when they're discharged from the center. For our referral process, they just have to be within the center when they are referred to us. And then from that point on, we do what we can do.
So I know that you said lectures weren't really your thing, but what do you really value from doing your undergraduate education now in the roles that you've had in your career?
I think one of the big things about psychology is it's such a broad thing to work in. There's so many different positions you can be in. Getting the breadth of understanding from the undergraduate degree is very helpful, and then you specialize from there. For me, the tutorials were always my favorite thing, to work collaboratively on group projects, to be able to sit and apply information. Even doing the dreaded role plays, I didn't mind too much. So that side of things I felt very helpful. Being given a task to write an assessment, to write something up, that was a better learning for me, because then I would research things. I could apply that information to something specific. And I found that suited my style of learning more effectively.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're doing so many assessments. So even if it's not sort of in that research context, you're still being able to use all of those research skills in preparing the
100%.
information that you need to provide. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, report writing is a big thing of what we do, and it's quite different to other disciplines like speech or OT, where they can see someone and they can knock out a very quick report just summarizing the results. But for a proper psychological assessment, you need so much more information. It has to be professionally written. It needs to be referenced at times. It's much more in depth. So the psychologists that I see working, our reports might be in 15, 20 pages at times with all of their appendices and stuff at the end. But, other disciplines might have that be 4 or 5 pages. So for me, it's about finding a way to have the information there, but finding the core of what is required and not going beyond that, because otherwise you're just not going to have time to write it all up.
Yeah, what does your sort of day-to-day look like? How do you balance gathering all of that information and having the time to prepare those reports?
It's tricky. And because we were a newer pilot program, basically at first I really prioritized trying to get as much information as I can from the young people, because I didn't know when they would be there. And it's much more difficult to engage them when they're discharged. And if they're going to a rural community, then doubly so. So I've really prioritized getting the information. And now I've hit a point where I've gone, oh, actually, I need to start really getting through these reports. So now it's really difficult to find that balance. So I do 2 clinics out at Cleveland Youth Detention Center each week. One where I do self-ratings like briefs and Connors and ABASs and that sort of stuff when appropriate. or just some developmental interviews to get some more historical information. And then I'll do my direct assessment clinic where I might be doing WISC-5s primarily, or we might do some NEPSIs or TONIs or something else like that to get some more collateral information around IQ, executive functioning, some of those other deficits, and really trying to figure out what domains the child might be really struggling with. And then the rest of the time, it's cold calling families or setting up appointment with families to try and complete the assessments with them, particularly stuff like Connors and Brief and ABAS, talking them through getting our allied health and youth work support to do that, or cultural support to engage families more appropriately. And then the rest of the time it's scoring and writing. So I do tend to spend more time staring at a screen than I might like to, but I like to take a wellness walk around the center when possible so I can get outside and get some sun.
That's definitely an important reminder for all of us to step away from the screen from time to time. What do you see as a big issue or something that our current students who are about to graduate, what might they be able to sink their teeth into and really help in the field of psychology?
Ooh, psychology is kind of a boom industry. I kind of feel like there's a lot of opportunity. I know people work in private practice. There's a lot of delay for psychometric work to be done, particularly for that early childhood side of things and getting NDIS support. Schools are really looking for psychologists to work more effectively to develop education support plans and things of that nature. But psychology, you can do case management for child safety or the NDIS. You can work in mining, doing induction interviews and recruitment interviews. You could look into psychological engineering and making different processes and adapting things for people of how they work, how they function. Really, I think the big thing that's coming up is how to effectively integrate AI into what we do to take away documentation time and replace that with face-to-face work, which frankly, I think most of us much prefer the face-to-face side than the writing and documentation side. So whatever we can do around maximizing that actual work with clients and making sure it's appropriate and effective and accurate, but utilizing AI in some of the other ways to speed up documentation processes. Even just like meeting minuting and that sort of stuff is really a sort of an interesting place that it's going. But I think the next generation of psychologists coming through, that's going to be a really defining thing, particularly over the next 5 years. And I really hope that they're really on the ball with it because I'm interested in that. I already feel left behind. So I'm going to rely on some of the younger ones coming through to upskill me as I start to work with them as well.
I think there's upskilling for all of us in our future. Tim, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It's been great chatting with you.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Professionally Psyched. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the ongoing support of our Psych community. If you'd like to show your support or if you want us to cover anything on the pod, reach out via our emails, and don't forget you can listen to full episodes on Spotify.